A productive life is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters consistently, intentionally, and with power. Most people are busy, not productive. They move all day but go nowhere. They exhaust themselves but never feel fulfilled. Why? Because productivity is not a time problem. It's an identity problem. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your standards, and your standards are built on 4 pillars whether you realize it or not. When even one pillar is weak, your life feels unstable. When all 4 are strong, momentum becomes automatic. Let's begin where every productive life begins, with clarity. If you don't know what matters, everything feels important. And when everything is important, nothing gets done well. Most people wake up reacting to notifications, to emails, to other people's priorities. That is not productivity, that is survival. Productive people don't react to life. They direct it. They decide in advance what deserves their energy. Clarity means knowing who you are, what you want, and why it matters now, not someday, not later, now, because a clear mind moves faster than a motivated one. When you are clear, decisions become simple. When you are unclear, everything feels heavy. Clarity removes friction. That's why lack of clarity creates procrastination. People don't procrastinate because they're lazy. They procrastinate because they're overwhelmed by uncertainty. The moment you know your target, action becomes easier, and here's the truth most people avoid. If you don't decide your priorities, someone else will. Your phone will decide, your job will decide, your environment will decide, and then you'll wonder why your life doesn't feel like it belongs to you. Productivity starts the moment you take ownership of your focus. Now understand this, focus is not concentration, focus is elimination. Productive people don't do everything, they do fewer things better. They say no more than they say yes, because every yes costs energy. And energy is your most valuable currency. Now let's talk about energy, not time. Time is equal for everyone, energy is not. You don't need more hours, you need more vitality. Low energy creates low output no matter how organized you are. That's why people plan perfectly and still fail. Because productivity is powered by state. Your body, your emotions, your physiology, they drive performance. When your body is weak, your discipline collapses. When your emotions are chaotic, your focus disappears. Productive people master their state first. They move their body, they control their breathing, they manage their sleep. Not because it's trendy, but because energy creates execution. You cannot think low energy. Now here's where most people lie to themselves. They say, I don't have time. What they really mean is, I don't have energy for this. And energy follows meaning. You find energy for what matters. You lose energy for what doesn't. That's why purpose fuels productivity. When your work connects to something bigger than comfort, you show up even when you're tired. Productivity without purpose leads to burnout. Purpose without productivity leads to frustration. You need both. Now let's talk about momentum. Momentum is created by consistency, not intensity. Most people try to change their life with bursts of motivation. They go hard for 3 days, then disappear for 3 weeks. That's not productivity. That's emotional chaos. Productive lives are built quietly. Daily standards, daily habits, daily execution. Small actions done repeatedly outperform massive actions done occasionally. And consistency is not built on willpower. It's built on identity. When you see yourself as someone who shows up, showing up becomes automatic. You don't negotiate with your identity, you act in alignment with it. That's why productive people don't wait to feel like it. They act and feelings follow. Now understand this. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is self-respect. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, your confidence grows. Every time you break one, your trust in yourself erodes, and productivity collapses when self-trust is broken. That's why starting small is powerful. You rebuild trust through follow-through, one task completed. One habit honored, one standard kept. Momentum builds quietly until one day everything feels easier, not because life got easier, but because you got stronger, and strength compounds. Now here's something critical. Your environment shapes your productivity more than motivation ever will. If your environment distracts you, your focus will struggle. Productive people design environments that support execution. They remove friction. They reduce distractions, they make the right action easier, They don't rely on willpower. They rely on design, and this is where most people fail. They try to fight their environment instead of shaping it. Change the environment and behavior follows. This is not discipline. This is intelligence. Now let me tell you something powerful. A productive life is not about doing more things. It's about doing the right things with full presence. Presence multiplies impact. 1 hour of focused work beats 10 hours of distracted effort. And focus is trained, not gifted. You train it by choosing depth over dopamine, meaning over noise, progress over pleasure. That choice defines your future, because productivity is not about today. It's about who you become over time, and who you become is shaped by what you do consistently. This is only the foundation. Now let's go deeper, because productivity collapses not from lack of desire, but from emotional leakage. Most people don't lose time, they lose energy through uncontrolled emotions. Stress drains focus. Overthinking drains momentum. Doubt drains execution. You can have the perfect plan and still fail if your emotional state is unstable. Productive people don't just manage tasks, they manage state. They know this truth. Your emotions are not something that happen to you. They are something you train. When emotions run you, productivity disappears. When you run emotions, productivity multiplies. This is why emotional discipline is a pillar of a productive life. Not emotional suppression, emotional direction. You feel fear, but you act anyway. You feel tired, but you move forward. You feel resistance, but you don't negotiate with it. Most people wait for emotions to change before they act. Productive people act first, and emotions follow. Action creates clarity, action creates confidence, action creates momentum, waiting creates stagnation. Now here's a powerful truth. Your brain is designed to avoid discomfort. Growth requires discomfort. That's the conflict. So if you wait for comfort, you delay growth. If you accept discomfort, productivity accelerates. Productive people have a different relationship with discomfort. They don't seek pain, but they don't avoid it either. They understand that discomfort is the price of progress. And once you accept the price, resistance loses power. Now let's talk about time, but not the way most people do. Time management is a myth. You can't manage time. You manage attention. Where your attention goes, your life grows. And attention is stolen by distraction, notifications, social media, endless information. These are not neutral. They fragment focus, and fragmented focus destroys productivity. Productive people protect their attention aggressively. They schedule focus. They eliminate noise. They create boundaries, not because they're rigid, but because they're intentional. They don't ask, what do I feel like doing? They ask, what moves my life forward? That question alone changes everything. Now understand this. Decision fatigue is one of the biggest killers of productivity. Every decision costs energy. What to wear, what to eat, when to work, what to start. Productive people reduce decisions. They create routines. They automate habits. They simplify choices. Less decisions, more execution. This is why routines feel boring to average people but powerful to high performers. Routine frees mental space for creativity and execution. Chaos drains it. Now let's talk about habits, the silent architects of your life. You don't rise to the level of your motivation. You fall to the level of your habits. Motivation is emotional. Habits are structural. Productive lives are built on systems, not willpower. Systems don't care how you feel. They just run. That's why productive people build habits around identity. They don't say, I'm trying to be productive. They say, I am someone who executes. An identity drives behavior automatically. Now here's something most people don't want to hear. Being busy is often a form of avoidance. You stay busy to avoid the work that matters most. Deep work feels uncomfortable. Shallow work feels productive. But shallow work creates motion, not progress. Productive people identify the one thing that moves everything else forward, and they protect time for it every day, no matter what. That's discipline at the highest level. Not doing everything, but doing what matters consistently. Now let's talk about momentum again. Momentum is fragile at the beginning and unstoppable once established. The hardest part is starting. Once momentum builds, productivity feels natural. That's why the first action of the day matters so much. Win the morning and you win the day. Start with intention. Start with movement. Start with progress. Don't check your phone first. Don't check the world first. Check your purpose first. That one shift changes everything. Now understand this. A productive life is not about squeezing more into your day. It's about creating alignment between who you are and how you live. When your values, habits, and actions align, life flows. When they don't, everything feels heavy and productivity feels like struggle. This is not a motivation problem, it's an alignment problem, and alignment is built through daily choices. Small, consistent, intentional. This is still not the end. Now we move into the level most people never reach, because productivity is not just about getting things done. It's about staying effective without burning out. Most people can push for a short time. Very few can sustain momentum for years. Why? Because they build productivity on pressure instead of purpose. Pressure eventually breaks you. Purpose sustains you. This is where the next pillar comes alive. A productive life requires meaningful direction. When your actions are disconnected from meaning, discipline feels heavy. You force yourself, you push, you grind, and eventually you resent the very life you're building. But when your work is connected to something bigger than comfort, effort feels lighter. You don't need constant motivation when your actions are aligned with your values. Productive people ask a different question. Not how much can I do today, but why does this matter? Meaning fuels endurance. Without meaning, productivity turns into exhaustion. Now understand this. Burnout is not caused by too much work. It's caused by work without purpose or recovery. Productive people respect recovery as much as execution. They know when to push and when to pause. They don't quit, they recharge. Rest is not laziness. Rest is strategy. You cannot sustain peak performance if you never allow renewal. That's why elite performers manage rhythm, not balance. There are seasons of intensity and seasons of integration. You sprint, then you recover. You build, then you reflect. This rhythm keeps productivity alive long term. Now let's talk about pressure. Pressure reveals who you are. When pressure hits, average people collapse or scatter. Productive people simplify. They narrow focus. They return to fundamentals. They execute what matters most. Pressure doesn't require more effort, it requires more clarity. Under pressure, do less but better. This is how productive people stay calm when others panic. Now here's the next truth. A productive life is impossible without self-leadership. You cannot wait for external structure forever. No boss, no deadline, no motivation video will save you long term. At some point, you must lead yourself. Self-leadership means you do what needs to be done even when no one is watching. Especially then, because character is built in private. Productive people keep promises to themselves, not because it's easy, but because integrity builds inner power, and inner power creates consistency. Now understand this deeply. Your standards determine your productivity ceiling. If your standards are low, your output stays low. If your standards are clear and non-negotiable, your behavior rises to meet them. Productive people don't rely on motivation. They rely on standards. They decide in advance. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is what I don't tolerate. Standards remove decision fatigue. Standards remove excuses. Now here's a powerful shift. Productivity becomes effortless when you stop seeing it as effort. When productivity becomes identity, you don't say, I'm trying to be productive. You say, I am someone who finishes what I start. That identity shapes choices automatically. Identity is the deepest driver of behavior. Change identity and habits follow. Now let's talk about contribution. The most fulfilled productive people are not focused only on themselves. They create value beyond their own needs. Contribution gives productivity meaning. When your work helps others, energy multiplies. You feel useful. You feel needed. You feel alive. Self-focused productivity creates success. At the highest level, communication is no longer about technique. It's about fulfillment sustains effort longer than ambition ever will. Now imagine this version of you. You wake up with clarity. You move with intention. You act with discipline. You recover without guilt. People don't just hear them. You are productive not because you're stressed, and that feeling stays long after the conversation ends. You don't chase results. That's what unforgettable communication. You don't wait for motivation. Now listen carefully. Identity. If you want people to remember you, stop trying to be impressive and start being intentional, not chaotic. Most people talk to fill space. And this is still Communicators speak to create direction. At the highest they know when to speak. They know when to stop. They know when silence says more than words ever could. Silence used consciously becomes a signature. Alignment between who you are, when you pause at the right moment, and how you give people time to absorb meaning. When alignment is what stays. Now let's talk about storytelling, the highest form of communication. This is where everything comes together. Clarity you can argue with opinions, you can debate facts, but you cannot resist a story you recognize yourself in. Gives you endurance. Great stories are not about being dramatic, they're about being real. They have struggle, they have doubt, feel stuck. They have growth. When you share a story, you're saying, I've been where you are. Alignment, and in that moment, walls come down. A productive life is not built in dramatic moments. That's why stories of failure are often more powerful than stories of success. The decision to wake up with intention, because they give permission. The decision to do the hard thing, permission to grow. The decision to keep your word when no one is watching. Truth most people never learn. Compound. The best communicators, something powerful happens. They speak to one person at a time because you even in a room of thousands. Self-trust they imagine a single individual who needs the message most. When you trust and they speak to that person. Hesitate. That's why it feels personal. You don't negotiate. That's why it hits. Communication becomes powerful when it feels like it was meant for you. Now understand this. Your presence speaks before your words ever do. Presence is not confidence. Presence is grounded awareness. It's being fully in your body, fully in the moment, fully connected to your intention. When you are present, you don't chase attention. Attention comes to you because presence is rare, and people are drawn to what is rare. They don't overload their lives. Now here's the final shift. They choose standards they can honor, and that integrity becomes no longer about influence. Now let's talk about pressure one last time. You stop asking, how do I sound? Pressure will always exist. And you start asking, life, what does this person need right now? Plans will break. When communication comes from service, ego disappears, and when ego disappears, trust multiplies. When people listen to those who genuinely care, not perfectly but sincerely. Now imagine your future. You walk into conversations with calm certainty. You speak truth without fear. You listen without judgment. You express without apology. Your words don't chase approval. They create clarity. Is not about your voice doesn't demand attention. It's about leading yourself. It commands respect. You lead yourself with clarity. Something you lead yourself with discipline. People come to you yourself with compassion. For advice, for leadership, for direction. Because beating yourself up destroys momentum because when you speak, it matters. That is mastery. Productive people are firm but fair with themselves. They hold high standards, but they don't carry shame. They learn. They adjust. Because when you master communication, that ability to continue is what separates those who build extraordinary lives from those who stay stuck, including your own. The same year that is the power of a voice that is aligned, grounded, and true. Now imagine your future again, not overwhelmed, not rushing, not reacting, but intentional. You know what matters. You protect your energy. You act consistently. You recover wisely. You contribute meaningfully. Your days feel full, not frantic. Your work feels challenging, not draining. Your life feels productive, not empty. That is what the 4 pillars create. Not just output, but fulfillment, not just success, but sustainability, and it starts with one decision, the decision to stop drifting and start directing your life. You don't need a perfect plan, you need a clear standard, you don't need more time, you need alignment. And when alignment becomes your foundation, productivity stops being something you chase, it becomes who you are, and when that happens, your life has no choice but to rise.